umgoblue.com. By fans, for fans, since 1999. Hello, welcome to this edition of the umgoblue.com podcast. This is Phil Callahan along with,
Clint Derringer.
and we rejoin Michigan football. When last we spoke, it was after the bowl game where we had a weird mix of the old staff with the new staff looking over their shoulders, not knowing which players were going to come back, not knowing if we were going to retain Bryce Underwood at quarterback, not knowing who we were going to retain or how we were going to retain them. So we know a lot more heading into the Michigan spring game. Well, Clint, how do you feel about Coach Whittingham with what we know so far?
Well, I am just grateful. I'm grateful that Michigan was able to secure Whittingham to take over after the and the Sharon Moore era. It was really, really lucky for Michigan's football program that Whittingham had kind of handed off the Utah program and still felt like he had more to give. That he had gotten to a point where he needed to move on, but internally didn't feel like he was done. That's kind of a very specific point in a coach's career. Doesn't always end that way for a coach. So for him to be available and for Michigan to be in the position to scoop him up when the job came open after firing Sharon Moore is that is the overwhelming feeling still for me right now, is just how lucky and fortunate the program is. And it's been reinforced with what we've seen from Whittingham, first with putting together the staff, finishing off the recruiting cycle in winter workouts, and now with spring football. Uh, I have liked everything that I've heard from him. All of his actions seem in alignment, and it seems as if there are parts of the culture of Michigan football that are being put back into place correctly. And Kyle Whittingham is the biggest piece of that, and I'm very grateful to have him here.
Well, it's interesting to me, Clint. Just this week, Coach Kyle Whittingham mentioned that he had met with Lloyd Carr, right?
I had a chance to meet with Lloyd personally in my office, and what a guy! I mean, just a tremendous human being, uh, sharp, uh, funny. I mean, I just really enjoyed our conversation with him, and I've had a chance to meet with quite a few guys from the past. Coach Harbaugh's father, Coach Harbaugh. I met with him for a while. I actually was able to get on the phone with Tom Brady the other day, and I'm going to be on the phone with. Is it still happening
It's
tomorrow?
happening.
Okay, Derek Jeter tomorrow. So, and I'm a Yankee. I'm a Yankee fan from the word go. So that's going to be big. And so, yeah, I've had a chance, and Coach Beeline as well. Um, who else have I met here?
John
Red,
Falk.
John Falk. John Falk. What a stud he is. Yeah, he is a. I love that man. And then Red Berenson, the hockey coach. I mean, just like I said, there's tradition and just this place is just oozing with that all those historical figures, and so yeah, very respectful.
And it really harkened back to me the last time we had a successful coach come from the outside was Rich Rodriguez, right? And how that transition was just so jarring and mishandled in a number of ways. So to have Coach Witt talk about, oh, yeah, I had Coach Carr up to my office. We had a great conversation. He's a great guy. I was just thinking how different this transition has been versus the transition of when Rich Rodriguez came in. And, you know, some of the things, and again, not to pile on Coach Rodriguez, that was a long time ago, but it was just such a jarring change, right? And definitely could have been dealt with a lot better on Rodriguez's behalf. And I think the Michigan community has learned a lot from the coaching transitions that we've been through. But it was just interesting because, Whittingham not only talked about meeting with Lloyd, but also talked about his admiration for Bo.
Never respected him absolutely, and observed him, and really, there's a set of CDs that I listened to, gosh, 20, 25 years ago. Lasting Lessons with Bo, something like that. It was on CD. So I got 2 or 3 CD thing, and I listened to that thing probably 20 times. Ironically enough. I mean, that's just, I've always been a big Bo Schembechler fan.
And it's that kind of thing where you kind of tip your hat to what was before you. And, while still recognizing that you bring a lot to the table, right? And especially the last couple of weeks, as I've seen Whit and his staff talk, um, they're very quick to say, to kind of duck any of the Sharon Moore drama. They'll say stuff, well, I don't know what was going on before, but we're here now, right? And it's interesting because, you talk about that some of the hallmarks of Michigan football are really coming back to the forefront under Coach Witt, and it's good. Like you kind of have to, you know, shake your head a little bit. Um, you know, the players are talking about more discipline. They're talking about being on time more. They're talking about more strength and conditioning, focus. So, Clint, you and I have talked about there were things around the edges of the program the last couple years under Sharon that we didn't really appreciate. We weren't big fans of. And it's very interesting under this staff to see things being more in alignment with what our expectations would be.
Yeah, it's the 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 culture piece that we're shouting from the rooftops about in 2023 and in the lead up to that national championship season. That was built over time. It was built by really really strong leaders in the locker room at the player level, and just hearing Whittingham in his first presser in March talking about the leadership council and praising Bryce Underwood's leadership and Jordan Marshall, and Marshall and Underwood are going to be captains.
Well, leadership is critical to a football team. Never been involved with a really good team that didn't have great leadership and a player-led group, and so you can't ever start that too soon. It's what we're used to doing at the other place. We always had spring/summer captains, and then we'll revote in fall camp because things change, the dynamic changes a little bit. So, but I thought that it was critically important to get a good start with the leadership, and that not only involves the captains but the leadership council, and they're really essentially the governing body of the team. And so things that need to be addressed and discussed come from the leadership council and the captains, and I think it's a good line of communication, a good way to communicate with your team and get a pulse of the team and where.
Just understanding that he had to kind of rebuild some things from the ground up, and again, he's fortunate, and we're fortunate as fans that he didn't have to rebuild talent from the ground up. Right, there's a lot of talent that stayed on this roster. He did bring in a lot of talent with him from Utah and other transfers as well. So there's a lot to be excited about as we kind of transition into actually talking about football. But he, as a head coach and somebody who has done it consistently at Utah for decades, knows exactly where you have to start at the foundational level, and talking about culture and leadership and what the expectations are in the building, internally and externally, and that they're high. They expect to be competing for the Big Ten title, and they should be every year, and that's a given. Says Kyle Whittingham. That's a guy that came from the outside, but it's actually what and fans and people that have graduated from this school expect to hear. So again, I am filled with nothing but gratitude that that the end of the last era led to the beginning of this era, because they seem very, very different, and that's a good thing at this moment.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? Is it's you had that spin out, uh, at the end of the season where things got really bad and really negative, and at that point, much of the coaching cycle had already been completed, right? So you're in a situation where you need somebody, right? And to have hit on and connected with a coach that fits so well with Michigan expectations and um, has had success and is basically coming in. Um, and it's interesting because him and his coordinators talk about changes that they had made to their program over the years to accommodate the transfer portal and NIL and things. And they talk about plug and play, right? They say, listen, yes, we have a very complex system on offense and defense, but because we're used to the churn of players, we had recalibrated our approach so that you could teach people very quickly. And again, they use the term plug and play, right? I think about Coach Whittingham, and really, he's plug and play here. The more I hear him speak, the more I hear his coaches that he brought in, the values very much align with what we would hope for, and I think what we assumed was going on, what we had our fingers crossed and our eyes closed, um, you know, that we hoped was happening, during the Sherrone Moore era, that more and more we were getting the realization that things weren't as we hoped. So, if it's hard to imagine a coach that could have been dropped in the situation that Whittingham was, and have hit the ground running, brought so much of his staff with him, and really resonated with the players that were already here, right? And it's interesting because one of the things that again, there's been a lot of good news, right? But one of the things that I really enjoyed was um, listening to new defensive coordinator Jay Hill speak, right? And one of the things that he mentioned.
So, I had a press conference type thing we did a couple weeks ago, and I compared it a lot to the 2023 defense that was here at Michigan. The reason I was familiar with that one is we had a common opponent in 2024 that Michigan had played, or the offensive coordinator. And so I was studying film on this offensive coordinator. Well, sure enough, they'd played Michigan in 23. And I'm watching them. I'm like, oh my gosh, that defense looks just like us. So I spent the next couple weeks studying the Michigan film. I think that that's a really good idea of what it looks like. But we want to be multiple in the front, 3 down and 4 down. We want to be multiple with our coverages, and we want to be multiple with our blitz packages, man pressures, zone pressures, 2 high pressures, 3 high pressures. And like I say, the better we own it, the more we can do. It's not a grab bag. We're not just grabbing stuff out of a bag, but it's intentional, and we're calling things for a specific purpose. And done correctly, I think we can have a ton of success here with the caliber of players we have.
And that is a great thing to hear, right? Because one of the things that had maintained a certain level of success from the Harbaugh era, till now, had been the defense, right? The defense had looked good, and he's talking about his defensive philosophy.
Well, so everything we do is sound. We're not guessing. I'm not just throwing, hey, this front looks like something cool that we drew up on a napkin. We're not doing that stuff. This stuff is sound. It's balanced as far as we're not putting 6 guys to the field and 1 to the boundary and just hoping it hits. Like, we're not doing that stuff. It's sound. It's evenly spaced, but it's coming from different directions. And it's tough to pick up. One of the blessings I had when I was assistant coach, I got to coach 6 years on offense, and I got to know how we protected things, and I got to know how we tried to beat certain coverages or certain defenses. I know how we slid protections to pick up blitzes. Well, now I can take the flip of that and just try to beat the offensive mind on the other side of the ball. That has been a huge thing in my career, is just knowing the offensive side of the ball in trying to create havoc.
Much as you had Jim Harbaugh, who learned from his dad, okay, you have the defense that Coach Whittingham brought in, and it actually comes from his dad's experience in the NFL.
So this is the crazy thing. I actually played in this defense. This is way back in the late 90s when I got recruited to the University of Utah. Coach Whittingham and his dad were both coaches at the University of Utah, and it's something that they had developed back when Coach Witt's dad was an NFL defensive coordinator. And I'm one of the very few people that's actually seen Coach Whittingham and how he called it. And I can tell you this, he was the best defensive coordinator or best defensive mind I've seen. So we haven't tried to change it too much. Now there's always tweaks and things that we're doing as college football evolves. I think we've evolved some things, but the roots and the bare bones of the defense go all the way back to those guys.
So you have these echoes, okay, of, hey, we've heard stuff like that before, right? And it is interesting that, you know, when you run into a coach who's very much about discipline and very detail oriented, it's not just something that he learned, it's something that he was raised in. And again, it's just a really interesting echo, and lots of, again, I can tell, I don't know if all Michigan fans have listened to all the availability that's been put out online, but I can guarantee you that if you take the time, the more you listen, the more you'll hear things that will give you confidence moving forward.
Yeah, I think you hit on the next big pillar of what we've learned so far in the spring is this alignment with Jay Hill, the defensive coordinator, and calling back to that 2023 Michigan defense, not only with his familiarity, having seen it in 2023, it kind of recognized a lot of the same pillars, a lot of the same concepts, but also he wants to build with the strength that they have on the roster on the defensive line and really tight coverage, lockdown corners. You know, that's a great recipe to create havoc. And we'll see who can step into some pretty big shoes to fill at the linebacker position from a personnel standpoint. So key players personnel wise on defense, but the alignment, right? Like they're not going to have guys that are playing out of position. They're going to have guys in their correct physical positions and maybe learning new terminology, but the ideas that they want to use and to be flexible in how they want to attack different offenses. It was reassuring to hear that alignment from the defensive coordinator, Jay Hill. And then on offense, when Jason Beck got up there, I thought the echo that I appreciated the most is that he feels very, very confident in the offensive line, and specifically the O-line coach, Jim Harding, calling him the best O-line coach in the country. And that when Michigan was rolling from 21 through 23 on offense, that was the identity of the program. The reason that Sharon Moore had his shot as the head coach at Michigan and as the offensive coordinator at Michigan is because he did such a great job on the offensive line. So to get back to well-coached offensive line being the hub, the driving engine of the offense is really going to be great. And then everything else that I heard from Beck was about, it was about Bryce Underwood. It's about how can we maximize the potential of this guy. And when I hear that it's going to be a big leap for Underwood, the gate, that sounds to me like they have a clear plan for how they want to utilize Bryce and his skill set. Probably sprinkling him into the run game once we get to the fall, and really making it tough for a defense and making them kind of pick their poison. So strong offensive line, the identity of your offense being kind of grounded in the run game, and a clear plan for how to use the one of the most dynamic players, certainly at the quarterback position in the entire country. I think Jason Beck sounded to me like he's got exactly the right mindset. So again, with it starts with gratitude from the top with Whittingham and this staff that he put together, including all those coaches that I just named, and really being able to build on a foundation that we're familiar with here in the program, and going back and kind of shoring up some of those foundational principles to get back to that.
It's interesting you mentioned, the new offensive line coach, which is Coach Harding. And you had returning offensive lineman Blake Frazier just raving about him.
Oh, I love him. Harding is unbelievable. I was just talking to Jansen about it. He's somebody that is very adaptive. He works with me, Sprague, Jake. He just a couple examples. He gives us all different tools to work with because we all play a little bit differently. So he's been unbelievable at coming in, and while introducing the new scheme to us, we keep a lot of our new on-field calls the same just to ease the transition. But he's been unbelievable. Super excited to keep working with him. His track record speaks for itself. So excited about it.
That's somebody who has seen, the Michigan offensive line at its best. And, when a player like that raves about a new coach coming in and rebuilding the offensive line and raising the standard up, it really gets me excited. I mean, Clint, we talk about on the podcast, and, coaches at all levels talk about that success begins on the line, the offensive and defensive. So as you mentioned, one of the things that is expected to be a strength of this team is the defensive line. And if the offensive line can meet that standard, we definitely are definitely going to have some interesting things to watch when the season gets started. Um, you know, Before we pass on the defense, one of the other things that made me really excited, in addition to what Jay Hill said, was what Rod Moore said. Okay. And, Rod Moore's been around forever and seen, the defense build and seen the struggles that it went through the last couple of seasons. And he had some really good things to say about it. And again, he's one of the players who compared Coach Witt to Coach Harbaugh.
I would say it's a kind of a similarity to Coach Harbaugh's regimen. It's a lot more strict than the past 2 years, and the weight room has kind of been a night and day difference than what we've had the past 2 years. We feel a lot stronger, a lot more progress, and then defensively, I would say it's similar to the defenses that we ran, but he has his own little tweaks and differences, and the offense seems like it's more explosive than what we've seen or what we've had in the past. So, and yeah, it's a lot different. Really good vibes around the building now. So,
I think what's going to be interesting to me, you talked about what we're going to see on offense, and I think what I heard from Jason Beck regarding Bryce Underwood is, hey, listen, we're bringing in all the resources he needs to get better, right? And they've thrown the gauntlet down, as you mentioned. He is one of the spring captains, and they're throwing the gauntlet down to challenge to him, right? Like, hey, we're going to give you every resource, and there's going to be a high expectation on what is expected from him. But so far, they've said great things about him, and basically he's been named the starter. Okay, there's no dorking around of, hey, he's going to compete for the job, and we'll see.
Well, Bryce is our clear number one. He's QB1 without a doubt. He has performed very well in the workouts, and not only with his athleticism, but leadership-wise, he's voted one of our team captains, and so he's a guy that everyone looks to, and the top 10% of your football team is critical, because if they're hard workers and doing things right, everyone else seems to follow along. They set the pace, and so Bryce has done a nice job of setting the pace.
He's it, right? And I kind of like that. I like that, right in that first press conference, Coach Whittingham just said, "Hey, Bryce is quarterback number one. Okay, let's see what you got." Right. And it's going to be interesting to see how Bryce deals with, again, brand new offense, right, for him. Another new squad coming in, a whole new coaching staff, right, from his perspective. So it's going to be interesting. He mentioned that, he was, one of the things that he appreciated was that, when he talked to Coach Whittingham, it was, "Hey, are we talking about the past or the future?" Right? And as soon as Coach Whittingham, made it very clear he's focused on the future, he was all in to stay here. So it's interesting that this team is pointed in, pointed moving forward, and you know again, there's a lot of work to be done, and I think that what as great as everything sounds, as excited as we are, we really need to recognize the challenge that faces everybody here, right? Um, you are pretty much rebuilding a coaching staff on the fly and bringing in a chunk of new players to a new environment. And this is going to be interesting. I mean, I think that, Clint, we've talked about, I really like what I'm hearing, right? But, the proof's going to be in the pudding and how quickly this team can pull it together. And I know I'm really looking forward to seeing how things look when we see the spring game coming up.
Yeah, you have some key pieces again on both sides of the ball, but right now I'm thinking about offense. There's some experience and a little bit of depth up front on the offensive line with a really good coach. That's going to be a big help. I mean, Jake Guanera got a lot of repetitions last year. It sounds like he's probably going to move in and play center, right? So that's obviously a key position to keep an eye on. Again, you have a two-headed monster at running back with a true freshman, Savion Hyder, coming in and raving about. Hopefully, we'll get to see, what that's going to look like. Whether those skill sets with Jordan Marshall and Hyder are really similar, or if they have, kind of if they're deployed in different ways. And of course, Marshall's much more experienced, older guy, as opposed to a true freshman. So he's really going to have to be the workhorse in the backfield, I would think, especially early in the season until, the freshman kind of haze lifts as we get into the later in the fall. And then Bryce Underwood has his favorite receiver back, Andrew Marsh, which was a big question mark right after, the changeover in the coaching staff. So Andrew Marsh comes back, and that's a big positive boost. And those two guys showed some natural chemistry and some natural rhythm together in an offense last year that was, pretty herky-jerky. Like that was really one of the only things that looked like it was a threat at certain times was, Bryce Underwood being able to find Andrew Marsh. So how is this new staff going to deploy, that wide receiver core to try to take advantage of defenses that are clearly going to load up and try to stop the run? Because this team is going to run the ball on first, second, and third down. They're going to run the ball from, all parts of the field on all downs and distances. So I would imagine, I think what we're going to see is really trying to eat up chunks of yardage and make explosive plays in the air. And I'm glad to have a guy like Andrew Marsh, if that's what you're trying to do, is take big bites out of the defense, especially in play action or at least in some kind of passing game that is built off of your running game.
For sure. And, you mentioned, um, you know, some of the returning players that you have. You got Jordan Marshall. And, you know, Jordan Marshall has tons of confidence in Bryce, right?
He's gonna be better. He's gonna be better, and he's. I'm still gonna say it. He's gonna win the Heisman someday. I still hold that to be true. And what I'm saying about everybody getting coached hard is he's getting coached hard, and they're demanding the best out of him. I'm demanding the best out of him. His teammates are, and that's how it should be. He should demand the best out of me, and I'm really excited to see the growth and for everybody to see the growth that he's made. And he's playing with a chip on his shoulder.
Talking about the how Bryce has grown as a leader.
Bryce is one of those people. He's a leader. He's a born leader. That's how he is, and a reason why we all wanted to come back here and make this place better is because of this reason. We want to put Michigan back at the top, and Bryce being an in-state kid and knowing how much Michigan means to him and his family, and he loves this place. He truly does. I love this place, and we just want to see this place be at the best. And I think he's demanding himself to be the best. Sometimes he puts too much pressure on himself, but that's the expectation you have to have at this university. We have the expectation to win every game, to win against our rivals, beat the Big Ten, and win a natty. And that's always going to be the expectations here. Nothing less than that. You should win every single game. There's not an excuse, and that's the pressure you want to have. And for him, he's attacking that every single day. He puts stuff on himself all the time, and I'm like, we all got to be better. You can't just put it on yourself. And it's really exciting the accountability he's had on himself, the leadership he's taken, being more vocal, and talking to receivers after the play, talking to me after plays. What did I think about this? And that willingness to take that feedback from not only players but the coaches as well. And we're truly all aligned and coming together to be better.
What's interesting to me in this, Clint, is we have, I say, our returning cast of characters, right? We have Jordan Marshall, who's always been a great spokesman for the team. We have Blake Frazier, who also was a great spokesman. We have Bryce, who is, your de facto leader at quarterback, right? And then you have a mix of the new guys, right? And one of the things that has really struck me in talking to the Utah transfers, right? Besides how incredibly polite they are and well-spoken, right? It's definitely, they're very well polished. Listen, they're here to win a national championship, okay? They're not here just to play. They're not just here to make an appearance in the big house, right? And, this will be their, this is one of the new players who have a lot of expectations. Defensive tackle John Henry Daly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the standard here is a national championship. You go outside, you see the big house, see the 2023 national champions, and you're like, oh man, this is pretty exciting. And the whole fan base expects that. So you have expectations, and you want to be able to rise up to the occasion. And so that's definitely part of it.
It amazes me and gratifies me greatly, right? That all of the players and the coaches who are here are like, hey, they know what Michigan's about. And one of the reasons they came here was to compete for the Big Ten and to compete for the national championships. Jay Hill said the same thing.
Do we expect to be good in year one? Absolutely. Do we expect to be competing for championships? All that. That's why we came here. So I don't think it's fair for anyone to say they're in a rebuild. In college football, no one puts up with that in today's world. But there are definitely things that we're building.
And, you have Coach Whittingham repeating it.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's awesome to be here. I mean, this place is incredible. All the things I said in my opening press conference way back when, 2.5 months ago in Florida, as far as this place being very special academically, the athletes you have to work with, the tradition, the resources. I mean, it's all here. And so it's a great opportunity, great challenge at the same time. I mean, the competition is obviously, the bar's been raised in that respect and in every area, recruiting, everything. And so, but this is one of the pinnacles of college football, so it's great to be here.
One of the things that I was questioning, okay, and when I say questioning, I mean you don't know till you know, right? But when these guys came up here, you're wondering like, hey, what are you here for, right? Is what's your goal? And all of these guys, everybody we're talking to, from the coordinators to Coach Witt to the players, is, hey, you come to Michigan to win. You come to Michigan to win big. And one of the other interesting things that I've noticed is that, so here you are, you have you know Michigan hoops just won a national championship, right? And you have the players basically saying, hey, this is cool. We can't wait till we do it, right? Like, it's funny because when Michigan basketball, won its national championship, hey, it's Dusty's second season. Hey, the clock's running, right? Definitely, and you had Mason Curtis, say it.
I think it was great for the university and for the city. Going out after being outside, seeing how happy it made the school and just brought everybody closer. It kind of gives us an edge, to run it back and be a football team to do it. Just want to do it for the university like they did.
And then you also had, transfer, and I'm going to do my best on this name, Houston Kahuna Hana Torres.
For that first game, I think we're going to come out explosive and we're going to shock the nation. We're going to come out and just let everybody know that we're going to be here to compete for that national championship, and we're just going to show off how explosive our run, how good our pass is, and then our defense is just going to show them what we can do.
These guys are throwing the gauntlet down. There's no tentative here. There's no, well, we'll see. You can definitely see the enthusiasm, and it definitely matches up with our expectation. And, Clint, we've talked about this on the podcast a lot, in the last season. You know, Toward the end of the Sharon Moore era, shall we say, I had a growing unease. Like, hey, I hope we're going to pull this together, but things weren't necessarily trending in a great direction. Okay. Like, we always talk about the warning lights on the dashboard, and there were definitely warning lights going off all over the place, right? All the warning lights right now are clear, and everybody is aiming with the same goal, pulling together, and it's really something. If I think about my mood where I was 4 months ago, right, compared to how bad things looked for a couple weeks there when things got dicey. And I will tell you, even down at the ball game, okay, I really had a lot of unease being at the ball game, like just not knowing which way this was going to go. And of course, we won't know for sure until the games, start counting, next season. But the mood is completely uplifting right now compared to where we were. Again, 4 months ago, things were pretty dicey. It definitely feels much better be where we are right now.
Yeah, and another part of it is the game, the sport, and the culture around the sport is still very much in flux. We've been talking, feels like probably 5 straight off seasons about how, there's a lot of change and it's going to keep changing. We're going to have this conversation again and again. And I think that has echoed to be true. But who's the reigning national champion right now? The Indiana Hoosiers are the national champions right now. And before that, it was Ohio State. And before that, it was Michigan. The sport is different. Any program right now from one of the power conferences via the transfer portal can create a roster that is capable of going and win a national title. If you can get it all to come together and play play smart and play within yourself and find an identity on who you are on both sides of the ball, it can come together quickly. I mean, that is right now, I think is it's a different feeling in all 130 football buildings around the country because of what Indiana did over the last 2 seasons. And why shouldn't Michigan be talking about winning a Big Ten title, winning a national title? What should be the goal, right? If Indiana can do it in 2 years, why can't, Michigan is starting well ahead right now. Sharon Moore's handing a better program to Kyle Whittingham than what Signetti inherited in Bloomington. I'll tell you that for sure. So I think the expectations are correct. I think they're reasonable. I don't necessarily, I wouldn't predict that they're going to go win the national title, but they're capable, and we'll see what, um, you know, how this all comes together, and we'll get our first glimpse of it next weekend at the spring game. But certainly should be the expectation and should be what they're striving for now, as it's time for them to come together and start doing all this work that we're talking about. That's for sure. And what else I hear, I think probably one of the most important things, and one of the closers for me, is that this sounds like a staff and players who feel like they need to go earn that title. Like, they're not saying you come to Michigan because trophies fall out of the sky into Ann Arbor, right? It sounds like they want the opportunity to go and earn uh, what they want to accomplish. And you and I have talked a little bit offline, and that might be part of the culture that had disappeared there for a while, is the hunger to go earn it, right? The part of the program that wanted to do the hard work and embraced that grit. Um, I think as a program, we kind of lost that. I think the players always had it. Certainly, um, I wouldn't question the grit or the toughness of any individual person within the program. But as a culture, and I don't think there was that same mental toughness to go and earn another championship. I think some people got a little bit too comfortable, like, because you wear the block M, those trophies are going to start falling out of the sky, and it's not that way. You got to earn it every single week in this sport, and I'm glad to hear some of that hunger right now coming out of the football building.
Well, one of the things that reminds me of Coach Signetti at Indiana was
High tempo. I mean, we push the tempo from start to finish, and I don't believe in being on the practice field for hours and hours. I mean, the work is the work, and you got to put it in, and it's got to get done. But if you can be more efficient and get it done in a more compressed amount of time, get the players on and off the field, I think that's, at least that's my feeling through the years, that works best and keeps the players fresher. And I think that they've really done a good job of adapting to that new mentality and new philosophy. Of course, I don't exactly know what the old one was, but they said practices were a little bit longer. But they have really done a good job responding to the high tempo and the just the pace at which we're working.
right, and that is one of the things that Indiana is known for, right? And I will tell you personally, I've always believed in that, right? I've always been a big believer of, there are programs that put in, hey, we do a 3 hours practice, and then there are programs that do a 2.5 hour practice and get everything done. Let's get it done and get out of here, right? So when Indiana has started having the success that they have, and you would hear Coach Signetti talk about that, I've always thought, that makes a lot of sense, okay? And you hear Coach Whittingham saying the same things, and you hear the players talking about it. And what he says is it helps keeps the players fresher, right? You're not out there, you're not running a marathon, right? You're get your work done, get in, get out, stay fresh. So it's interesting that what and we're reading between the lines here because it's being reported, and people are saying, well, when players say that perhaps under the previous regime, things were going longer and not necessarily crisper, right? And even Blake Fraser talked about it.
I think it's a lot more execution based. I think we're not out there as long as we were last spring or for practices in the past. There's a lot more focus on getting more work done in less time, so less taxing on the body, but still making sure that we're getting as much work done and work at the things that we need during that time.
I think it focuses the players on, hey, get it right. It's not about putting your time in. it's about getting it right, right? It's about being precise, and it's definitely one of the things that resonates with me. So, as we talk to our audience, I'll say, listen, I don't expect that everybody listens to everything from availability, and not everything from availability is available, right? To everyone. But the more I hear, the better I feel. And it definitely resonates not only with my personal philosophy, but it seems to resonate with the philosophy of when Michigan has been more successful. And some of the, well, I'll just say it, sloppiness that we saw the last couple years are not going to be tolerated. And it's just funny because one of the things that the players have been talking about is, and Jordan Marshall was talking about this.
Just within being on time, you need to be 10 minutes early to everything. That's something that, I mean, guys would roll in whenever they really wanted to, and that's something that I really like.
That every meeting starts early, right? And Clint, what I remember is that back in the Lloyd Carr era, he would say, if you're on time, you're late, right? And I remember players, cringing at that. Like if you're showing up on time, you're late, right? So the first thing I hear, in availability is, we start, and this, back to that quote that I just played from Jordan Marshall, is that, a horn rings through the entire stadium. There is no, or the entire facility. There is no doubt when meetings start and when meetings end, right? It is all hands on deck. And it's interesting that, you know, that unfortunately, that meetings starting on time and people being on time was something that perhaps wasn't exactly what was happening all the time previously. So definitely, that's not something that I could imagine that Harbaugh would support when he was here, and I got to believe that was, some of the sloppiness that we observed in other areas kind of exhibiting itself. Um, we're also hearing, about an increased accountability and strength and conditioning, which is also another thing that Michigan teams were known for when they were competing for the national championship. So I'm trying to balance. On one hand, I'm horrified that these things weren't just the state of play the last couple of seasons, but I'm trying to be grateful that we're getting back to that standard, and it sounds like things are moving in a proper direction.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And again, we'll see what we can see in the spring game. It's just gonna be good to see the football out there moving, the helmets out there, right? Some competition, a couple flashy plays. It's gonna be fun to be in Ann Arbor, to be in the stadium. So that's all gonna kind of help increase that optimism and these positive feelings for sure. And then when we actually get into the depth of the summer and then into the fall camp and eventually the start of the season, there's no ramp ups in this particular schedule again, right? SEC opponent coming into the big house in the second week with Oklahoma, and then the Big Ten opener in week 4 is Iowa, which is always a tough challenge, right? Regardless of their shortcomings, that's they're always in the top half of the Big Ten, and they're always a threat to cause problems at the top of the Big Ten because they're very, very consistent under Kirk Ferentz. So this program and the new staff and this team coming up here in the fall, not only do they have a lot of work to do and big expectations, which is all great, but the clock's ticking. They got to be ready to go almost right away. So there's glad to hear that they're working on precision and execution and being efficient because there's a lot to do and the clock has already started running and they got to get moving in order to be successful.
So Clint, another thing that's reminiscent of Coach Harbaugh is, we all saw the video of Coach working out and pushing sleds during practice. Well, Coach Whittingham is also known for his strength and conditioning, for his personal strength and conditioning and working out. So it's just interesting. I'm seeing a lot of things that I like. I will say too that he's a different guy. He's definitely going to be interesting to follow. And, I think we're just going to end with, we have transfer wide receiver J.J. Buchanan, who said this.
Yeah, man, I think we have all the potential in the world. I think this can be a really special team. We got all the guys. We got the scheme and Coach Beck. Got the new head coach and Coach Witt. I have all the belief in this team, and I believe that Michigan we will be at the top again at the end of the season.
We will all be watching to see how that turns out. Again, this is Phil Callahan along with
Clint Derringer.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.
The tradition, the history here is incredible. I mean, it's as steeped as any program in the country, maybe the most in that aspect. And Michigan football was before I got here and after I leave is Michigan football, and so I'm really more a custodial role here and just making sure I'm not here to change any of that tradition or history. Put our own stamp on the program and our own way of doing things, yeah. But as far as I'm very respectful and very aware of all the tradition and history here, and I don't have the right, nor should I have the right to alter that or change that.
Thank you for listening to the umgoblue.com podcast. All rights reserved.